Hello and welcome to Property Question Time. I'm Stephen Galpin and this is the show where you can have your property related questions answered by our team of property experts. And joining me today is James Allen, Director of P4HB, and if you don't know what that stands for, it's Procurement for House Builders. Welcome.
Thank you.
And joining James is Rob Burton, co-founder of Dapper Atelier Interior Designers. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
Good. Okay, well, we'll get straight on with the questioning. And James, you're going first. I'm about to commence my first property development of 3 houses and would like to understand what kind of lead time I should expect in terms of supplying the main materials needed.
The main materials, obviously, for the build, I would say, with the bricks and the tiles, they come with the longest lead time depending on the brand, the manufacturer that you use. So being able to understand that prior to breaking ground, getting your order in the supply chain, even before you broke ground, to ensure that you get the same batch and the same batch of bricks or tiles, obviously the colour orientated as well. They can go out to up to 26 weeks, and given the time, obviously, building 3 houses, you need to ensure that you plan correctly.
Yeah. I mean, James, I've recently done a programme with you where we've talked about the increased importance of the role of the supplier. Yes. And I think your real message is to get involved at the earliest possible stage, isn't it? Because now we've got local authorities starting to insist on various materials, various construction methods as well. And it's not always the case that your architect knows everything, is it? You know, it is important to have you involved at the earliest stage, especially if you're talking about something like 26-week lead times. I mean, it can be critical.
Absolutely.
Because don't forget, if you borrowed the money, that's another 26 weeks you've got to be paying interest. Is that not right?
Absolutely, Stephen.
Okay, good. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think a supply chain, obviously, lots of things happen around the globe on a weekly basis. They must have a massive effect on the supply chain. You know, certain countries exporting items, if there's political tensions or wars that we're seeing at the moment, that must have a huge effect, which can, imagine, add to that lead time.
Absolutely. And again, it comes down to the planning, knowing what you know, and ensuring that you're in at the early stage, you understand the supply chain aspects of that too.
Yeah. Do you have much trouble where you're delivering goods? I suppose you do it in stages as the drawdown requires. Do you get much variation of colour of things like bricks and
you
tiles?
can do not so much in the world that we live in on the projects that we're on, because it's something that we're fully aware of. But if you're a new developer, or if you're new to it, or for example, if your supply chain says we get quite a lot of that stock coming in on a monthly occasion, you don't know how much of that stock coming in, and the different batch variations are huge. And it's the same as if you get slight little variation in the colour of the cement too, then obviously that can have a significant impact. So ensuring you're buying it all together in one stage, and then reeling it off as and when you need it, so you don't bulk up the site.
What colour cement then? I thought cement was cement.
Well, it's a cement mix, obviously, the different types of mixes, where if you do your 4-to-1s, your 3-to-1s, and so on and so forth, it does have a slight variation. And obviously, when you come to the sand comes in the same batches as well. So if you get 2 different types of sand, a sand in April, for example, and then a different sand in May, the likelihood they're different types of sand. So they've come from a different section of the quarry.
I know as a company you are very conscious of needing to guide people through this process, and I mean that's quite an important factor. I mean, I suppose, like a lot of things in life, it only matters when things go wrong, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Well, it's a business transaction at the end of the day. We're in it just as much as you're in it. So why don't we collaborate and work together? It makes life easier having sort of 3 people sat around a table going to the same goals but on a different journey. Why can't we go together? It's easier.
Well, that's music to your ears, Rob, isn't it?
Plan, what I say.
or fail to plan and plan to fail.
Well, exactly.
That's the classic one, isn't
That's
it?
a true word's been spoken.
Okay, well, that's good. So really, earliest stage involvement, and it could be anything up to, I suppose, 4 or 5 months, couldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of lead.
Involving every key stakeholder within the project timeline at the earliest convenience gives everyone the best opportunity to be able to perform to their best capabilities, but also overcome any hiccups that may occur collaborating together.
I mean, as I alluded to earlier, so many people we talk to in development and refurbishment businesses, they forget that one key element, time. They don't take into consideration the time it's going to take and what the potential hold-ups could be. and make sure they've catered for them and cost those contingencies in, really. I think that's the most important point.
Just quickly on the time aspect, how important is your own time on the development?
Yeah.
So why not involve the key specialist companies, for example, to be able to help, because your time is better served doing what you're really good at. Let someone else take over from the elements that they're really good at.
Tell me something, do you use AI to predict your lead-in times and supply difficulties?
Predict, no. Plan and accuracy, yes.
Right, okay. And you do that from the plans that you're given?
From the plans, and it's based on the systems that we've invested in ourselves, that help towards the goals that we're trying to achieve over the next few years, alongside our development as well. So looking at ways that not just solve the issues now, which some of them are accuracy, how can we be more efficient in the future and using data to really drive what it is that we do.
Okay, jolly good. We're obviously past the times of driving your van down to the builder's yard and picking it all up.
I mean, that still happens, Stephen, it still happens.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Plan.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that, James. Rob, I want to improve the decor and overall presentation of my home, and I'm thinking probably here presumably for sale, and subject to cost, want to understand what are the most important areas to concentrate on when considering design and implementation.
If you're looking to sell your home, I think the number one thing has to be first impression. If you've got somebody coming to look around your home, they make their mind up in the first couple of seconds. Do I like this property or do I not? So it's really making sure that entrance area is very well lit, feels light and bright, feels welcoming. And I think feels looked after, because if you get this impression that the house maybe isn't looked after, it gives you a negative mindset from the offset. So I think that's really important. I'd also say the kitchen, in my opinion, is the hub of the home. It's the key element now, and it has been for a while, and I think it will continue to be. It's where people gravitate round. It's a central point. So making sure the kitchen is well equipped, making sure it's presentable, and making sure really it feeds off all the other rooms in the home.
Yeah, and I mean, it needn't be that expensive, need it really? Because I see all these companies advertising on television that will actually perhaps just renew all the doors in a kitchen rather than the whole carcass and everything else. Worktops you can now buy separately. I suppose they're made of sort of composite materials in the main, aren't they? So it needn't be, it needn't be a £50,000-60,000 job.
You can be very shrewd and very efficient. You're absolutely right. I was considering respraying my kitchen so someone can actually spray it, and that's significantly cheaper than repairing it, or replacing, should I say. But it's just been clever, and so many unique, innovative products out there now that you can use. I think it's just doing your research, and there's so many places you can get inspiration, and paint's a great one. Liquor paint can give a room a completely different feel, and you can do that yourself quite inexpensively. So there's definitely some tricks.
Yes, and I suppose again, just look at your lifestyle. If you spend the most amount of time in your kitchen, and perhaps it's a dining kitchen too, then obviously that's going to be the focal point of your home, isn't it? And there's nothing worse than opening a front door, as you say, and it's dark, it's dingy, you have to switch the light on, there's all the kids' shoes lined up, and you've got to think about presentation when you're selling your home these days. We're dealing in a market now where things are so expensive. People are going to take a pretty strong view of how things are going to look and what they want to live in, I suppose.
I think it's still absolutely a buyer's market at the moment as well. There's a lot more stock than there is buyers. So I think people have options and they have choices. So if you give that negative first impression, you think, well, if you're not looking after things I can see, what's behind the scenes? And it would set that kind of that problem in my mind about what the home may or may not offer.
Yeah, just in terms of, you just mentioned something there, it's a buyer's market at the moment. I think I'd agree with you, but that doesn't fit with the weekly news that we get of housing shortages, does it? So I suppose what we've got to do is try and discern what's available and what isn't, and at what level in the market. I've always held that I think that government never understand that you've got to have the whole market moving for it to work properly. And if it's just the first time market that's working, that's no good on its own, because those who've been in first time homes want to move upwards. Yeah. And if that market's inflated or stuck, then you've got a problem, haven't you? And I think your particular business in interior design and design in particular can do an awful lot to make the market move.
Absolutely. It makes people buy with their hearts rather than their heads sometimes. You you must have walked into a property and you fall in love with it and you think, I have to live here. And if you walk into an empty shell, you just don't get that same experience. It's a much kind of less emotional purchase.
Yes, I did that in Henley-on-Thames. The only thing I overlooked was that being right on the river has its disadvantages in the winter.
Yeah.
As you watch the water come up through,
Exactly.
through
Is
the
it on
lawn.
stilts?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are. Anything to add to that, James?
No, I think you answered that really, really well. It is all about first impressions and consistency.
Okay. Well, on that note, we'll go to the break. So join me again after the break when I'll be asking James and Rob more of your questions. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of Property Question Time. I'm with James Allen and Rob Burton. Welcome back, guys. And James, your second question is this. And I'm guessing this is coming from a budding or fairly new developer. What happens if my materials supplier is late with any of the products and holds up the progress of my project? Can I claim damages?
In the short word, no. Really, in some contents, it depends on the agreements that you have in place with your supply chain. And obviously, if you're a smaller developer, the likelihood is that you don't. You'll be using the local builder's merchant, which unfortunately, human error and human issues occur on a daily occasion. So the answer will be no. But whether you was to formally enter in an agreement with a supplier and look at building a long-term relationship with them, then by all means you can help manage expectations and plan better to ensure materials arrive on time. But then you've got to kind of take the hit with the smooth, that there's going to be times that there's slight delays, there's going to be times that you've been brought forward. It really does come down to the collaboration, transparency, but more so planning in advance.
Yeah, well, we discussed that in the first part of the programme, and this collaboration at an early stage is critical. But can you insure for these sort of mishaps, delays?
Not necessarily. You can and you can't. You can in regards to, you can plan as good as you can in regards to lead times, the product availability, the materials itself. But unfortunately, in the world that we live in, manufacturing sometimes obviously occurs some issues. You get some damages, and likewise with windows and doors. There are other elements that take that into consideration that can knock you back a couple of steps, but you are able to build in other elements of the project, for example. But it is relationships as such, and being able to rely on those relationships.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, for instance, I wonder, a lot of people when they're doing a development, for the construction period, they'll take a bridging loan as opposed to a long-term loan. And I'm just wondering how sympathetic the bridging lender is when you hit a problem of perhaps no supply of materials or whatever else. Would an idea to have somebody like yourself produce a schedule and just highlight the danger points, perhaps? Would you perhaps recommend giving that to your lender? At least you've thought about it, haven't you? And at least you've presented it to a lender and could probably save yourself some grief.
Absolutely. We actually work alongside a couple of lenders ourselves doing exactly what you've just said. But for the developers and contractors that we do work with, the information that we provide them back, they do take that to their bank. They do take that to the investors because it has so much information on there for the build materials, it has the cost information, has the Gantt charts and delivery schedule. So it's more as your work in progress sheet that you can revert back to on any occasion. So being able to go to your lender with more information to be able to, along the project, it's going to give them more confidence in the ability to lend to you. Yeah. And going back to, will there be some breathing space? I don't know. It depends on how good your relationship is with your lender. I know some of the lenders that I know are in it with you. They're in it as a business opportunity with you and want to deliver that site alongside you, where on other aspects, sometimes it is a one-way street as such.
Yeah. I suppose the difference is today, as opposed to perhaps 20 years ago, you've got far more specialist lenders, haven't you? So you've got lenders that specialise in refurbishment finance or development finance or buy-to-let finance. And I suppose in one way that is an advantage because you're going to be talking to professionals who really understand what you're doing. But it's quite an important factor these days, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking from your point of view, Rob. I mean, if you've ordered a lot of Italian furniture in July, you can dream on till September, can't you?
Yeah, I don't think it's just from Italian places. I think it's the norm across Europe now. A lot of people shut down for August, but it's not just August. It's the 2 weeks before August and the 2 weeks after August. But I think if you know your stuff and you've been doing it long enough, you understand that and you build that into your lead time, or you source from the UK or somewhere where you know you're not going to have those delays.
Yeah. Do you tend to source from the UK more now these days?
It's a mix, and it depends on the project, depends on the lead time, and depends on the value of the project. We try to. I think it brings a natural sustainability to it. And out of COVID, supporting British business is, we're very proactive with. But sometimes the products we want might come out of Portugal or might come out of Italy. We buy a lot of lighting from Spain, so it just depends really what's available and what's best suited for the project.
I see. Okay. Good. Okay. Well, what we're going to do, Rob, is move on to your question, which is, I'm about to start the refurbishment of 2 apartments I own. I've been advised to seek the assistance of an interior designer, but I'm concerned that this will add considerable cost and time to the project. I'd like to know how interior design services are costed and whether there's a realistic expectation of increased value if that is the route I take.
I think firstly I'd say absolutely an interior designer will add value to your project, and it's looking at it as value add rather than a cost, looking at the value and the return on investment. I think it can be quite a daunting thing for some people approaching an interior designer, this preconception of who they are and how they work. And for me, it's about every interior designer having a clear pricing structure. A lot of interior designers will charge up front for their services, which I think is fair, but it's about making sure they're very clear with you from the outset what their expectations are. And it could be that you're working with a one-man band, an individual interior designer, all the way up to a design firm with 100 people, and their pricing structures and how they work will be very different. So it's about having that transparent, honest conversation from the outset.
And I suppose it also depends on what you're expecting that designer to do. There are some companies that just will offer you the design and say, there you are, off you go, that's what you need to do, this is where you can get this and that from. Other designers will do the complete installation package, buying your furniture and etc. So I presume in those cases there'd be a design fee and then perhaps a cost plus on the materials and products that you buy?
That's fairly common. There would be a design fee, and then it would be a procurement fee, and depending on the size and complexity of the project, there might be a warehousing fee and other associated fees. But again, that should be very clear from the outset about how that works, and assumption can often get people in trouble. So it's making sure that you don't assume that your designer is going to do that, or and be disappointed down the line if they don't.
Yes, okay. I quite like the idea of you sort of trying as hard as you can to buy British, as it were. I think that's quite a commendable thing, and I think it's also easy to control the sort of green credentials of what you do too.
I think it's the quality as well. Like, we have a lot of manufacturers based local to where we are, and you can go to see the product, sit on the product, feel the product, whereas it's been shipped from overseas, it comes in a huge amount of packaging, and often you don't see it until it lands on the development or in the property.
And then there's the bit missing.
It was the wrong colour.
All
of the above.
Yeah, I bet you're glad you don't get involved in this.
So I actually work very closely with a lot of interior designers. You make our life a lot easier. When it comes to obviously price and products for materials of second fix and the interior design, we're given a baseline price. If we work with an interior designer, they've given us the visuals of what they want, how they want the aesthetics of the rooms to look, what type of paints you want, what type of light switches you want. Now, if we're able to estimate those products up front from an earlier stage as well, you've got more of a live budget throughout the whole of the project, and that's live pricing. It's if you've got a bronze light switch, for example, but you've only been quoted for a white one, if you don't find that out until you come to the second fix stage, there's a difference of £3-4 per light switch.
And there's 20 or 30 of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you do that at the beginning and we know it's a bronze one, for example, we've already budgeted for that. So, and then it's an opportunity to value engineer against the different brands, for example, that are out there. So we actually welcome working with interiors. It can make our lives a lot easier.
It's the first time I've heard that.
Well, they are, Rob.
Yeah.
You've got a good contact there. So just tell me, we're in very difficult times in terms of property financing. Young people are having a great deal of trouble financing properties. But also, as I said, it tends to lock the market. Are we finding people are looking at a lot of refurbishment now as opposed to moving?
I think confidence is coming back. I certainly think post the kind of COVID boom in 2021 and 2022, first-time buyers, I've heard a lot of stories about parents saying now's not the right time to buy. Interest rates are the highest they've been, in 2023 as well. Just sit tight, and a lot of people were then in reinvesting in their own properties. But I've definitely seen through my network and my contacts confidence coming back, especially with first-time buyers. And you have people like Santander and other banks who are coming out and saying, now we've got a mortgage at 3.5%, and suddenly you're seeing this confidence grow.
Yeah. What do you think, James?
No, I'll agree. I think you've answered that really, really well, to be honest.
Are developers feeling confident these days?
I think they are feeling confident, but they're also nervous about the what-ifs. The what-ifs of the future. Where are we going to go? Unfortunately, you can only change what's in front of you. So if you focus on what's in front of you to make those changes, and going into the development side or the refurbishment, it's a cheaper way of upgrading your lifestyle.
Yeah, but I see here, for instance, a couple of developers have actually parked sites that they've got, and they're saying, we're not going to touch this site for 2 to 3 years now because we want to be sure of the market that we're going to be selling into. And that's very difficult. I mean, if you start building a 70-storey building, yeah, like we've said before, you can't get off, can you? You've got to carry on because your build is exposed to the elements. It might go through a very harsh winter with no windows in and just a framework, which can cause damage and cost a lot of money. And I suppose then everybody starts moaning at you about the materials not lasting. But there we go. Okay, well look, thank you both very much indeed. That's James Allen from P4HB and Rob Burton, co-founder of Dapper Atelier Interior Designers. So thank you both very much for coming in. I'm sure our viewers are very grateful for your information and your expertise. Thank you a lot.
Thank you, Stephen.
That's all we've got time for today, so join me again next time on Property Question Time.